everyone? Adam here, So Wizard Podcast. I'm sitting down with Stokes, I'm guessing is what you want to go by.
Yeah, Stokes the writer.
Awesome. Stokes the writer to talk about his newest comic, Intrusive Thoughts. Stokes, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, man. I'm feeling good. I had a great first day and looking to carry through with the
That's
through the end.
awesome. Well, before we get to Intrusive Thoughts proper, when did you get into comic making and what was that kind of first step towards going for it?
I think I had a similar journey as a lot of people. It was the pandemic where we were all just sitting around, and it was just like, all right, well, I got nothing else to do. Like I might as well. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of new projects coming out, over the last couple years. I think you're seeing the after effects. So that's when I really started to put in the groundwork to start making comic books.
Had you been like a lifelong reader or a fan?
I'm a more of a manga fan, which I'm always
Okay.
scared to say because I don't want people to be like, oh, like to me it's the same medium, but it would
Yeah.
be disingenuous to because I would just read I was addicted, I was a bad kid, so I was always grounded. So it was like that's all I could read. So I read Naruto, One Piece, like all the shonen stuff. Death Note. I read it. I would read it again, read it again. It was like obsessive. So it would be disingenuous to act like I was the same, like I was a kid reading like Spider Man or something like that all the time. Like so, I would say manga more so.
Okay. Yeah, I'm with you there where I feel like it is a comic book. It's just
Yeah.
like an offshoot, like a style of comic book.
hmm The lines are blurred right now, and I mean it's literally on the same. It's the same medium, but it's printed. But like, yeah, the lines are getting blurred where you're getting a comic book influence on the eastern side, and you're getting like a manga influence on the western side, which I think is amazing. I think like Common America is dope. I think My Hero is dope. I love it.
I feel like the art, especially, is like a lot of the American comics are kind of leaning into the more Japanese style art, from what I've seen.
Yeah, no, I think so. And it's well, you gotta think about it. Like comics don't have the worldwide appeal of something like manga. Like one like in Japan, manga is way bigger. It's like way bigger, and then it's like the cultural like you have superhero icons, right? Like I can go get a lunchbox with Superman on it, but like people are not. You're gonna be rare to be sitting on a subway or something watching somebody read a comic book or something like that. But like you
Mhm.
do, it's just more ingrained in the culture. And then when you go to other places in the world too, it's bigger. Like one Piece is bigger than Superman right now, so it makes sense to making a comic, like find that middle ground is something I'm striving for because like that's you're gonna sell a lot of copies that way.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. The superhero comic as we know it in America, I mean, obviously there is some worldwide appeal. Everyone in the world knows Batman, Superman,
hmm
Spider-Man, like the big names. And of course, now with the MCU, it's spread. But I know like even Europe, all the different countries in Europe have their own little
Yep.
comic niches also, and it's not what we have.
Yeah, and the MCU is like, to be clear, the MCU is it's kind of its own thing, like
Yeah.
I read somewhere that there's not even a significant bump in readership in comics when like an MCU movie drops. So it's almost like an entirely different thing. So yeah, it's two different cultures. It's a lot. It's a lot of mangas coming out, and it's to me the medium is only getting better as well. And I think that's something that's interesting is that you're kind of like, to me, when I'm reading a new comic book, it's almost like it's regressing. It's almost like the writing quality is regressing. It's almost like the medium is moving a bit backwards. And you look at manga, you look at, like, I don't know how familiar you are with these, but like Chainsaw Man, Dandadan, Kaiju number 8, they're third, fourth generation manga, and they're kind of taking the shorthand and doing new stuff with it. And then the shorthand from like a comic book is like events that happen in a different run or something else, like some other thing you have to cross reference to understand. Whereas this is just like I just have to have a base knowledge of like how like say shonen manga works. And this is gonna the pacing is going to be faster because I'm already familiar with the tropes and the things you're subverting, and it's also a lot smarter. So Yeah, I think it's a great I think it's a great medium, and I really can't wait. I'm making a manga this year, and I really can't wait to put it out there.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's really
So
exciting.
you're relatively new to making comics then. Is
Yes.
Intrusive Thoughts your first one?
This is my second comic book. I made my
Second,
first
okay.
comic book series, Decay, and that one dropped in 2022. That one dropped in 2022. Yeah. So this is a relatively new thing. Or 2021. I'm tripping. 2021. I dropped in
All a
2021.
blur.
It's like you do the same thing every day. Cause like pretty much all I do is work on comics at this point. Like you do the same thing every day, so it's hard. But essentially, I've been making comics for less. My first comic book came out less than 2 years ago.
That's awesome. It's
Yeah,
really cool that 2020 was the pandemic and you're like, okay, well, now's the time if I want to do this creative project. And then inside really 2 years, because we're still in January now,
yeah.
um, you have two books out, which is insane.
Two books, 3 issue, or excuse me, 4 issues, and then
Yeah,
I,
not two books, two titles.
two titles, and I have a third title that could drop as early as say March. And I think that's the thing is with releases you have to it's like a strategy, like ideally, so it's so important for me in building up the infrastructure, like my boy Pat. I don't know if you know Pat Shan. He did
No.
like Cheeky Destiny New York. He's like huge. He's like one of the bigger creators in indie comics, and he does pretty much a monthly release. It'll be like every like a month and a half, I think, in between. And what that does is you get to tell more stories and make more comics. So that part of what I'm trying to do is build the infrastructure to where I could release a comic book a month. Because to me, I just want to tell more stories. I want to get through the single issue thing and try to like get to a trade, for instance, and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, that's the thing. It's I've been very fortunate to not to have a lot of bumps in the road to like slow up production, but I've also learned to be malleable,
Mhm.
and so that when things come up you can kind of adjust or and tweak things to make sure you can keep things moving.
For you creating comics, how many hats do you wear? Sorry, I couldn't come up with a question.
I would say writing, like producing, like creating is in terms of like funding and everything. And I would say editing as well. Some people say you can't be your own editor, but that's it. I really don't, from the technical side, I really don't touch too much into that because I really want to focus right now on understanding the medium. I'm new, like you said, I'm new, and I don't read. And I said I don't read. I didn't like read a lot of American comics growing up. I read manga. Like I can tell you the visual language of manga, right? um which is its own thing. That is different. That is a different. It's a different medium, or it's the same medium but it is a different language in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
So I'm trying to learn, basically trying to put myself through a boot camp of understanding the visual language of comic books. And all things considered, like I'm really proud of myself. I feel like I've done that in a relatively short span, and that's what Intrusive Thoughts was about. Intrusive Thoughts was like, I want to make a timestamp of where I was at for instance, 2022. Like, so you can see 2021, here's where I was at with the K, issues 1 through 3, and here's where I'm at Truths of Thoughts. So I'm really focused on just understanding the medium and just focusing on that. And then once I get a mastery of that, if I get a mastery of that, I might look into like learning how to letter or edit or something like that. Something that's going to be, maybe I can get like jobs or stuff like that, or also I can get a secondary, deeper understanding of the medium once I understand like lettering, for instance.
Yeah, that makes sense. Try to take on one piece at a time and see what you like and what fits.
Exactly, because like to be honest, I'd rather do one thing. Like I'd rather be an amazing writer and like creator, like in terms of like organizing stuff, than like being pretty good at like art, lettering, like writing and all this stuff. Because honestly, glittering is relatively pretty cheap, to be honest. Like it's like $10 to $15 a page, I think, for really good lettering. So it's like um I'll pay that every time. That's a easy thing to pay. So it's like what I need to learn is writing a good script, finding artists and stuff like that, because that stuff is infinitely more valuable, in my not more infinitely valuable than good lettering, but it's easier to find good lettering than good artists, for instance.
Okay, I can see what you mean.
Yeah.
As far as the artist for Intrusive Thoughts, it didn't come across as a manga style to me.
Yeah.
If I had to make a comparison, it kind of gave me like Sandman vibes.
There you go. There you man. Every time somebody says that, you know what's so funny is I read Sandman in preparation. I couldn't understand that shit at all. It's like I need to watch the Netflix movie. No, but I'll also give myself some credits. I'm very I feel like I'm versatile. Like for me, I look at like Tarantino because I love movies. I love movies and cooking are like two of my big kind of reference points. So you look
Okay.
at Quentin Tarantino, he has like this encyclopedic knowledge of like multiple stuff, mostly movies. So when he's making a movie, he can just like pull inspiration and drop it in, and it feels really natural. I will say like the manga influence for me is not something that I'm chasing, but I'm like here to be a cool moment. And something that sticks out to me in manga is it's really great at like something shocking happens and you just tell the motion. I don't know if you've seen Dragon Ball Z where somebody gets hit with like a beam and it's like their body rocks back and there's a look of shock. It's like manga is incredibly good at capturing those kind of moments where it feels like it's moving, but it's not because there's so much implied motion. So stuff like that I try to really go after. But as far as the actual style, if I'm doing a manga, I'm gonna do a manga. But what I'm really trying to capture is like those moments in manga that make it so addicting. You know, those the like I said, when you're looking at you're looking at a still image and so much has happened. You know, there's also there's so there's I can't get this is a rabbit hole, but you're
No, no,
not
it's
going to
great.
see you're not going to outright see the manga influence. I'll say yet. Also, yeah, you want to keep reading because you know, this is the first issue.
Right. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I get it. Um, yeah, you definitely do have a lot of tone and a lot of feeling in Intrusive Thoughts, and it was really cool where, without giving spoilers to people listening, I mean, obviously you know the story with the character who's having these
We can do spoilers, bro.
nightmares, and it kind of they're intrusive, like the title
Yeah.
says. So it's like messing up his reality, and it's like it's such like a not jarring because it doesn't take you out of it, but it's such an abrupt switch back and forth, and you really
Mhm.
capture that kind of level of like confusion and frustration, and just like he's kind of just done with it, but he can't, just put it behind him. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, you know, because I'm not gonna say I have insomnia. I've had really bad sleep. Like I make comics, right? So anytime you have like a hobby or something like that, a side hustle, it demands attention, you know, like it's hard to put that phone down. And then um I like you're just being half awake. It sucks. Like it's just it's just so terrible and it's incoherent. And I think that's something that yeah, I think that's something that me and DNS captured great. DNS the artist, and I actually wrote the script with him in mind, which is another great thing. Is when you can write to the artist's taste or style, that's going to add more cohesiveness. But yeah, it's supposed to feel like a almost like a waking nightmare, you know, like just like what the character is essentially going through.
Yeah. As far as writing for the artist, did you have a conversation with him before? Or did you write it thinking about him doing it and hope for the best and it worked out?
Well, you know what is so crazy is so I did this entire comic book. This first issue came apart like in like 4 months. I was just so ready to start a new series. Everybody like it just seemed like conclusion. So much of the process stuff I've forgotten because it was so much. I know I'd worked with DNS for 2 covers on the K, 3 covers with the K, and we had a great relationship. He would do an amazing job. Some of the best covers for that series. And I asked him like, "Would you ever do long form?" And he was like, "Yeah." You know, he did. Yeah, and I sent him the script and I said, "You let me know if this is something you'd be interested in." He liked it, and that was more or less like I said. I wrote it with him in mind. So that was the process. It was very. I don't think I'll have a pre-production production thing as easy as that again. Like it was super seamless, you know, finding a new artist. And that's also the beauty of hiring people for variant covers. I like to treat it as like a test, like for a bigger series, right? Because how do we work together? If the variant comes out bad and we had a bad thing, then that's you know, that's kind of it. If we have a great relationship and the piece comes out great, I like your style, we can do more stuff and work, you know, work towards more things.
That's a really smart way of doing it and looking at it. One, you get cool variant covers, bringing in other
Yeah.
outside talent, but also, yeah, if you commit to however long Intrusive Thoughts is ultimately going to be. I read 29 pages. 29 pages alone, if you're not getting along with the person, is an eternity.
Man, I've been very lucky. I've been extremely lucky with the artists I've selected. But yeah, you don't want it. It's like when it's like at work, it's a job. Like you'd want a healthy working environment, just like when you do this. So nah, like I said, shouts out to DNS. I've been very, very fortunate. And it like what I'll say about Marcelo for Decay and Intrusive Thoughts, I'll say about DNS is they really care. You can't expect you can't expect an artist to have the same like enthusiasm about a comic book unless you're paying them on the back end because it is a job.
Mhm.
But it is really nice when you have an artist who actually cares about the work and wants to make the best product possible within reason. It's very it just makes everything easier.
Yeah, for sure. Did he do the art and the coloring? Because a lot of times those two jobs are separated.
Yeah, he did both, which is also really nice.
Yeah.
He did that, and then he had a part somebody who works with Mere Mortal who did like their art the lettering to me, it just the aesthetic works perfectly. It's like this kind of like really aesthetically pleasing but slightly different. It's like slightly off key like lettering that I think fits with the style perfectly.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, okay. I didn't really think off key. I thought the lettering was really nice and professional. Well, I mean, not that it wouldn't be professional if it's off
Not
key.
off key, but let me say like just a little bit different, like a little bit
Okay.
whimsical. That is, which works with DNS. I would almost say it's like a Tim Burton esque, like you said, Sandman, style. So when I say off key, I just mean like it's just like a little bit different in the way that they letter.
Yeah, that makes sense. It fits the art more than just like I put letters in a bubble on a page. It's flat. Here you go.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. For your writing style, do you write it panel by panel? Like in this panel, we need a close up of this character on the left side doing this.
Yeah, you have to, man. You can't really give somebody just a script and be like you're paying them per page and they have to break it down too. There's no way. So essentially, yes, I do the panel breakdown. Now there's times where it's like, yo, this is what we need to do. This needs to happen here, like this. If it's foreshadowing, especially a lot of times foreshadowing,
Hmm.
or it's a specific moment that I've made. And then sometimes it's like, look, do what you think works for this scene. And you give them a certain creative freedom. Like I said, I feel like flexibility is a superpower. Like to be dexterous and to be able to roll with the punches and figure things out on the fly is really important. So I try to find a good balance of like, yeah, unless this is like an iconic moment, do your thing. Do your thing to see if you like of your interpretation of the words to see like what comes up.
Yeah, okay, that's cool. Because I would imagine the artist wants to have some not agency on the story, but they want to be able to put their stamp on the work also.
Yeah, because at that point you could have anybody really. Now I think that's kind of the worst case scenario is just you could just the artist can't put their stamp on it at all. What kind of what's the point?
Right, that it's just kind of like a gig and they're just a robot.
Yeah, pretty much.
For intrusive thoughts, was there any moments where, say, a page came back and I'm not like trying to make bad blood. I don't mean for it to be that serious, but
No, you're
a
good.
page came back and it was missing some key element that you needed for 5 pages down the line or something.
There were things that of course you're never gonna it's never gonna be the same. And my thing is always if you want it perfect, learn how to draw. That's my perspective. And keeping that in mind, it would be like, um, okay, how can we if he makes a choice that I wasn't anticipating, right? How can we adjust, right? Do we have to make an adjustment down the road or down the into another page, right? Can we move a moment to another page? So it just like I said, it just goes back to being dexterous to me.
Yeah, okay. So it's a little bit fluid through the whole process.
Yeah, no, you cannot you would cause so much problems for yourself for not being able to just go with like I said, go with the flow sometimes. I mean, yeah, sometimes, but you just think about in life how many hard-headed people there are. It's like like you don't want to be that guy, you know.
Right. Yeah. You have your story, your script in mind, but it's not chiseled into concrete before you start.
Exactly, exactly.
Do you find the same thing with the lettering? Obviously he's going to put in the words that you want, but maybe as you're reading through what looks like the finished version or close to it, do you ever want to change some wording or move something or add something in?
Absolutely. No, 100%. And I try not to. Like I really try to avoid doing that. I mean, well, like to me, yes, because essentially the dialogue, it's not like a movie. Well, no, it is kind of like a movie. Like you're going to hear the script, we're gonna read out the script, and maybe they act it out differently, or whatever. What anything can happen. So yeah, maybe the dialogue looks, maybe it's too much dialogue, maybe it's too many words. Maybe it can be anything. So yeah, I try to, once it's done, like once I say it's good, I try to really not go back. But yeah, no, you absolutely have to like update that dialogue once it's typed out.
I definitely found too many words being an issue in the beginning.
Yeah, to no, exactly. And I try to keep my dialogue sparse anyway. Which does two things. It lets the art tell the story, and then word balloons take up a lot of real estate. And the
Mhm.
less pages you have the letter, the less you have to pay your letter as well. So
That's true. Yeah.
it just makes the most sense.
I also found the pace for intrusive thoughts with the sparse dialogue. There'd be some runs where there's like maybe like a groan or something, but not really like talking for a few pages, and it really speeds it up. Not that you're like flying through it, but you're just image to image
Mhm.
to image to image, and it feels like rapid fire, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's the main thing for me is consumability, right? Is because I want anybody to be able to pick up this comic book and, like, if not want to read it, at least appreciate the artistry, right? And if you when I believe, I'll be honest, like I glance over. If it's a bunch of text, I glance over that shit. Like I really do. Like my eyes will glaze over. If I'm reading this and it's not plot specific, like my brain will literally skip over it. And so for me, I don't want that. I don't want any kind of moments. Whenever you see dialogue, I want it to be like super impactful. And so what I do is I try to keep it minimalistic, and it's easy to add a line or two there, here or there. But what you're also doing is when you're minimalistic, you have to make the dialogue count more. You have to make it more concentrated as well, which means better. Like to me, it just means better characterization. Like if I can get a point across in two instead of four, it like I said, it helps the artist because they have more room. Maybe I don't need as much lettering. It helps the letter. It just makes the overall process just easier for me.
That makes sense. Yeah. How many passes on average would you say it takes you to get that line crafted right, or your script where you want it to be, or is it totally variable?
No, I mean, you generally, here's what I do is I just write out a rough draft, right? I mean, it's got grammar, it's not formatted super great because I want to get feedback. You can't get feedback, if you're trying to make it perfect. That's not what a rough draft is. Then I get back and I get notes, and then I'm pretty self-reliant, so I'm pretty good at making it pretty close, so we don't need any major changes. Like structurally, generally speaking, like it's like 80% there, right? Add the structural stuff, fix the grammar sometimes. And then for the third pass, I kind of add and break down the panel, the page, stuff like that. And then I'll
Okay.
kind of look over it before I send it to the artist, right? I'll just kind of parse it over, send it to the artist. Anything stand out? No. And then we're good. So it's really kind of like three drafts. It's like the rough draft, the second draft, the panel breakdown, and then kind of just a once over. Yeah, that's typically what I do. And then when I'm actually making the comic, I will tweak things. Like I said, I'm just looking at what's happening. I'm tweaking things. I'm coming up with new ideas. And then so there, like I said, it's fluid. I keep saying that, but it really,
Yeah.
really, like you said, it really depends.
Well, any creative endeavor has to be fluid. I'm just so interested in people's process that I like to get into the specifics, even though it's like, here's how I generally do it, but there's all these variables. So of course it's going to happen.
Yeah, because if you make a big change on page one and then you don't change it on, say, page seven or something like that, then what are you, what are you doing at that point? So
Yeah, likely won't make sense.
yeah, or you're just not going to make it as good as possible. And like I said, I think it's pretty easy to just keep an open mind and just be kind of like forward thinking as well. And
Yeah.
there's some projects where I'll update the script every batch of pages, you know, because there's something information. There's a information that was covered. So it's a fun process.
It seems like you get it done pretty quick, because I think you said what was like 4 months from concept to comic for this one.
Pretty much, yeah. So it like Decay, my first series, wasn't getting the response from publishers that I would have liked. So for me, I was like, okay, I'm gonna make another. I'm gonna like make it like bigger, you know what I'm saying? Make it use more resources. And so I was so focused on that, and I really liked the story. And when I write a series, generally speaking, when I write a series, I want to write the entire thing. Like I want to write if it's 5 issues, I want to write 5 scripts, you know, and it'll get rougher and rougher as we go, but I'll have like a series, like a really detailed series breakdown, but more than that, like so then entire series is written out and I can send it to people and get feedback on it in advance before. So I want people's perspective on the entire series story before we start with the first one. So that was one thing. And the story just came together really organically, you know. And then so I found an artist, and like I said, they were great. It was pretty seamless. So yeah, no, it probably was about 4 months to where I really like sat down and wrote the script. And then also, so what I do is I outline crazy. So if your the typical outline is like, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like it's just like a scene breakdown. Here's the scenes. I do one like ABC. So I do a breakdown of the scene in the outline. And with dialogue, you know, with dialogue as well. So what that does when I finally go to sit down and write the script, I have the flexibility that I mentioned to add new lines or whatever, but I also have a through line for every scene. I have a through line for the entire script, whatever it is, you know, screenplay, movie, or what have you. And it adds a lot of focus. I don't have to worry about characters rambling or something. I mean, you know, you'll always have lines that you don't need, but essentially the thread of the conversation is always going to be there. So I can get a script done fast. Like depending on the script itself, like depending on like how much world building there is or like stuff like that that you have to really sit down and write out. I can bang out a script like like a 12-page script in like 2 days. Just trying to, like I said, just trying to get to that rough draft so I can send it to my beta readers and we can like, you know, keep things moving.
Yeah, that's awesome. The detailed outline process is huge.
Mhm.
It
Well, it's
does the
something I
work
don't
for you.
know. I'm sorry, what you saying?
I just said it does all the work for you. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry. But yeah, I don't know when. I think I developed that during the pandemic actually, because I would get so like a lot of times I would think of dialogue is my favorite part of like writing. So I think what would happen is I'd have these line of dialogues. Oh my God. I've had these lines of dialogue and I'll be like, okay, like I'm gonna write this in so I don't forget it. And then I think I just fleshed out the line of dialogue and I just add more lines. And to me, when you're writing dialogue, like it should kind of feel natural, like it should kind of just come together because it's a conversation, right? And we all know how to have hypothetical conversations in our head, you know, like we all know how to prep for something. If like you just do like if you have to talk to your boss about something, you're thinking of possible scenarios. So it's just an extension of that. And then you end up, yeah, with an entire conversation in like a bulletin.
Have you ever had issues with your characters? Because every character has to have a unique voice and sound like a unique person, but it's all coming
Yeah.
out of one head. So have you had issues with that, or you kind of have it ironed out by now?
Well, you know, that's so interesting because sometimes, honestly, sometimes I do have that problem because I'm going so fast, right? Like I am going naturally and not trying to think too much about it. So I can generally. Here's what I will say though about that is, um, like when you watch a Tarantino, and I got somebody disagree about this, well, but when you watch a Tarantino movie, right, or like the characters talk the same. Like
Mhm.
they have the same cadence. They'll repeat. You know, there will be audio motifs. They'll, you know, they'll rhyme a lot of times. And if I could show you a clip, if I could just show you, like, listen to the audio of a Tarantino character, you could probably guess who that is. Same thing as Aaron Sorkin characters. You
Hmm.
know, they have a cadence. They they
Sorkin for sure.
the yeah, the way it's almost like a play. It's almost like music, like the rhythm of how they talk. And it's like, I'm not going to say they can't do it, why can't I? But when you're going for a specific tone like that, if you're going for a specific tone, like if I'm making a noir of like a noir John like that, the character's gonna talk similarly. You know what I'm saying? Like they're gonna speak like older, they're gonna talk in like they're gonna pontificate, or you know what I'm saying, they're gonna they're gonna talk, maybe talk a little bit faster, they're gonna talk a little vaguer. There's all sorts of things. So to me, you don't want your characters to talk too similar on you want to be a conscious you want to be a conscious choice, you know. And also it also helps if you have sparse dialogue, because the more dialogue you have, there is an opportunity to distinguish, but the more dialogue you have, the more chances you have to make your character sound the same as well.
That's a good point. I didn't think about it from that angle. Yeah, that's a really good point. If you have all
Yeah,
these,
because
go ahead. Sorry.
I'm gonna say, like, yeah, also with less dialogue, you have to show don't tell, and you have to be more atmospheric, which also helps the overall.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. That's a really good perspective. I never considered it from that angle.
Yeah, I just thought of that. I just thought about. I love talking about dialogue. Like dialogue is my favorite. Like I said, favorite part of the process. And to me, that's what I kind of what I want to bring to comics. This like I also want to be versatile. Like I said, I don't like like Tarantino movies and like Aaron Sorkin movies. You know, these are my favorite kind of medium. Like these are my favorite thing. Aside from like no, like more than manga. Like it's truthfully my favorite thing when like two characters are talking. And it's like beautiful dialogue,
Mhm.
but it's a different medium. It's a comic book, and it's it's antithetical. You can make a you know because in a movie, dialogue is most of the thing most of the time, especially in the Aaron Sorkin movie, especially better like movies that we consider great. Dialogue is a major part of it, and it's oftentimes the spectacle. If you look at, I mean, if you look at the MCU movies, you look at like Aaron Sorkin movies, Mark McDowell movies. That's the spectacle. That's why we're there. We're here for these interactions. It's become like an art in itself. And then when you look at comics, it takes up real estate on the page to have conversation, to have speech bubbles and stuff like that. So it's disadvantageous to have a lot of dialogue. So that was a thing. That was a thing I was conscious of, and I think some people will think I overcompensated, but to me, it's just like okay. And then once I get, and then even this first issue, there was not a lot of opportunities to have a lot of great dialogue, a lot of great back and forth. You know, it's a lot of, it's about loneliness. So like you're not going to have a lot of back and forths, just by the nature of the story. But when we get to later issues, that's when it's going to break out. So I'm really excited for the series is going. Really really
Yeah,
excited.
that's very cool. Well, why don't you tell people where they can get intrusive thoughts?
Absolutely. So, if you search "Intrusive Thoughts" on Kickstarter, Kickstarter.com, you can find it. You can also find me at stokesthewriter on Twitter and at Super Comic Book Bros on YouTube. Super
Oh,
Comic
very cool.
Bros.
What do you cover on your YouTube channel?
Man, mostly comics, but like just pop culture in general. Me and my boy Chris, we our live chats are like comic focused, and then like we're starting to do video essays about different media and stuff like that. Because video essay was really really one of my favorite. I just love talking about movies, so it's like I do want to be like a person that can like making video essays full time. Just sounds so cool. That's what I was doing before, and that's what I'm gonna do after this is editing an essay.
Oh,
I
very
find
cool.
it's not fun, but it's like when anything's going good, it's great, and then when it's not going bad, I'm in one of those rough stages right now. So
Oh, yeah, yeah. Where you get
that's
caught
what.
up in the edit. Yeah.
Though I have a laptop that I got in like 2019, and it kind of sucks. And now, so whenever I drop something in the editor, it like it has to buffer and load, and it's like, oh my god, this
Oh,
is
yeah,
pain.
yeah.
This is
I've been
painful.
editing off an external hard drive because the new laptops just don't have any memory, and it's like takes 10 times as long.
It's a shame, man. It's a
Yeah, it's
shame, but
funny.
we powered
Well,
through.
Stokes, I really appreciate your time and coming on. Intrusive Thoughts was awesome. Everyone should check it out. Probably didn't deep dive on that enough, but I liked hearing about your process. It was really cool.
Yeah, I like to talk around the comic, because to me it's just I'm like a conversationalist, So it's I think we had a great talk. Thank you for having me.
I'd like to thank Anthony Stokes, Stokes the writer, one more time for coming on to talk to us about comic creating, his writing process, and of course, intrusive thoughts. It's a really cool looking book, really unique. The artwork really tells the story. It's that Marvel thing where they could tell a whole story with no words. Stokes definitely can. Intrusive Thoughts is available now. Check it out. Follow him on social media. There's going to be a lot of cool stuff coming from him. Please make sure to like and subscribe, to the bell, do all those awesome things. We got a lot more interviews, new movie coverage, screener coverage, comic reviews, all that stuff you love coming your way. You're not going to want to miss out. Speaking of not missing out, make sure you listen to So Wizard Podcast every single week, wherever you get your podcasts. SoWizardPodcast.com is your resource for reviews, recommendations, videos, merchandise, and more. So Wizard Podcast can also be found on Patreon, where for as little as $1 a month, you get multiple monthly bonus shows. And we love hearing feedback, so drop us a note in the comments, leave us something on social media. All the accounts can be found after the show and in the show notes. And on a more personal note, a good friend and I have an ongoing comedy comic series. It's called Social Studies. Follows a group of friends through high school while they deal with all the ups and downs and all the ridiculousness that comes along with that. We write it like a sitcom, and we do it in the style of the 90s cartoons that we grew up on, love, and inspired us. You can think of it as like a spiritual successor to the Nicktoons of the mid to late 90s. You can find all that at socialstudiescomic.com, on Global Comics, and on Comixology. Thanks.